Hello, guys. Welcome, everyone, to our live stream today. I was trying to set up the live stream with my iPhone, but for some reason, that just didn't to function with screen sharing or with the screen. But as usual, could some of you guys let me know whether you can actually hear me well in the chat? That'd be really, really useful. If some of you can just chat and write down in the chat whether you can hear me properly, whether this little microphone is working, that'd be very much appreciated. I'm not quite sure if I can change the camera now still. Probably won't be able to, but that is all right. Then we can just going to do it like this, I think. Ariel, thanks for letting me know. That's very much appreciated. Good to see you in here, and looking forward to also seeing you tomorrow in accountability check-in if you can make it. That'd be fantastic. Since I don't have let me at least put some light on, so we have a little bit more light. Yeah, it's all right. And I have a couple of things today. Thank you, Michael, for letting me know. Ariel, I'm also looking forward to it, and will share a little bit more about accountability check-in that we do tomorrow in the club with all of you guys. Last week, we kicked off the Small Wins Challenge, which was very nice, which I wanted to show you guys. But afterwards, I saw that, in fact, it didn't properly load when I share my screen. So we can kick off a new try later on. But first of all, I wanted to do, of course, a round of questions. So if you guys have a round of questions that you have brought with you today, then you're welcome to ask your questions in the chat. Just put them here below in the chat, and I will be answering the questions one by one. As usual, the live stream is recorded. We have about half an hour of time right now to address your questions and concerns, anything that you would like me to talk about. And this week on Friday, I'm sharing another video. And then very soon, this is also something I'm quite excited about. The podcast will celebrate 5 years and 100 episodes. 5 years and 100 episodes. I didn't think I was going to be able to do that just all by myself, to create and raise a tinnitus podcast that really I create all by myself, and interview so many people, talk to so many people, and that podcast would still be there after 5 years and 100 episodes. I didn't think that was going to happen, but I pulled through. I didn't publish an episode every single week, but I did pull through. So as usual, of course, I think I have the link. Let me check whether it still works, but it should be tinnitus-podcast.com. Yeah, still works. So I will share the link with you here as well for all of you guys who might be interested to check it out afterwards. Tinnitus-podcast.com gets you directly to the link tree. And on the link tree, you'll be able to select which platform you want to listen on, whether you want to listen directly on SoundCloud, or whether you prefer to listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Anything that you like, you can check that out and select that. Yeah, rounds of questions. So again, as I said, whenever you guys have a question, just pop them down there in the chat. Anything that you guys would like to know, anything that's important for you. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about tinnitus causes, whether tinnitus gets worse or not, and ultimately, is there a cure or not? These are like 3 talking points that I have brought with me and prepared a little bit for you guys. But of course, as I said, I'm happy to do questions. And if we finish earlier, I'm not too upset, because I have a cold this week, and it's really a little bit of a pain to be talking for a long period of time. And I'm doing a lot of coaching sessions this week as well, and our community meeting tomorrow night. So to be very honest, if we finish a little bit earlier, if we have answered all the questions, that's not the worst thing in the world. Okay, great. Then let's get into it. If you don't have any questions for me that you are writing down and putting in the chat. There's the first question. Look, when you start sound therapy, is it common that the tinnitus gets worse first and changes in frequency and volume? Let me say it like this. I had another question on the channel recently, like a few days ago. I'm not sure whether that was you or someone else, but the question was actually, What happens when I get new hearing aids, and the hearing aids technically makes tinnitus worse at first, right? So the question from that person was like, the tinnitus gets worse by wearing hearing aids, and my answer to that is, yeah, at first that can be the case, that the hearing aid induces a little bit of changes, and that then the tinnitus in fact gets a little bit, the tinnitus perception of course gets louder, and that might be due to the fact that the auditory cortex has to deal with more input, right? So the part in our brain that's processing the audio and responsible for you hearing sounds is then a little bit more triggered, because once you have a hearing aid, it sort of like compensates for the hearing loss that you have, and then therefore it's a little bit more triggered, and therefore the tinnitus might appear to be louder. Um, that's something very, very normal, and I think it could be a similar concept in sound therapy, where when you put sounds all the time, right, the auditory cortex is busy all the time, and it might be that, when you turn the sound therapy down, or you don't have the sound therapy all the time on, then it might be the fact that it fluctuates a little bit, or your perception of the tinnitus is higher. It's quite difficult to say, right? When whether you are a lot more conscious of your tinnitus because you started sound therapy and you want this to really work, or whether the sound therapy itself leads to more increased activity in the auditory cortex before it sort of like normalizes, right? It's a little bit like when you look into the sun, right? Let's compare it a little bit like that. Your eyes have to adapt to the level of light coming in, right? So the similar thing is with the auditory cortex. So when you have sound therapy or hearing aids for the first time, your auditory cortex, right? The cochlea in the inner ear and the auditory cortex, the part of the brain that processes sound, can be more stimulated, and that overstimulation can lead to overactivity. That would be at least one of my assumptions. So I could say that both of them, probably for the hearing aid and the same thing for the sound therapy, could be why your tinnitus fluctuates a little bit. I would just pay close attention to that. But I mean, tinnitus fluctuations are normal for pretty much everyone, right? For example, sometimes we get more tired in the afternoon, or we have a stressful day or something like that, and it's not uncommon for our perception of our tinnitus to either increase or decrease based on literally that, right? What time of day it is, what conditions we are in, how much we slept, how much caffeine, sometimes alcohol. All of these kind of things can influence that. But again, what we're here to talk about on this channel is not about how to best control your tinnitus all of the time, but how to best respond in a way that your brain can learn that tinnitus is not a real threat, that you don't have anxiety, anger, all of these feelings lingering around about your tinnitus that keep you stuck in this loop of reactivity where you can't habituate, but that you learn a new way to responding even to fluctuations that is a lot more favorable to teach your brain what would be beneficial for you in terms of best dealing with your tinnitus. Let me know whether that is sort of okay as an answer. Happy to get into more of a discussion if you have anything else. Otherwise, I'd move on. Yeah, sure, absolutely. Mark has a question. He has 4 types of tinnitus reach sets as night. Is that common? Interesting. And then El Hueso. Hola, El Hueso. Saludos no, Bogotá, no, Colombia. ¿De dónde eres? ¿Qué piensas de Lenire? Ya te digo. Okay, I'm going to do another section, another small Spanish section today. We have people here from Colombia, and then I've also seen that a few people from other Spanish-speaking countries were on my channel recently. Mexico, Colombia, I think Chile as well, or something like that. And yeah, there's my wife texting me on my watch. Then I can go into that question as well. He asked, like, what do you think of Lenire? I will share a little bit of an insight without getting sued. I mean, they actually were a sponsor for my podcast for a time. And, yeah, Bogotá. Okay, yeah. Mi esposa vivió en Bogotá también, y yo también estuve allá un par de veces, sí. Bueno, listo. Okay. Yeah, let's do Mark's question next, and then let's talk about my opinion about Lenire, without getting sued from El Hueso de Bogotá. Mark says he has 4 types of tinnitus, which resets at night. Is that common? Hey, Mark, could you give us a little bit more insight about that? I think it would be, what do you mean with resets? Like, everything calms down and then it starts all over again, or what does that mean? It's definitely not something that I hear every single week, but if you can clarify that a little bit for me, that would be really helpful, because I don't know, maybe it's me, but I don't properly understand. I have various forms of tinnitus at the same time playing as well. So for me, it's like high-pitched ringings next to each other. So various high-pitched ringings next to each other. But they don't reset. Like, they're just always the same level. No, it's not true. Actually, sometimes I have fluctuations and spikes as well, which I think all of us get, right? But usually, they don't really reset or something like that. All right, it is variable. Every day has its own pattern. Okay. And Mark, by the way, welcome to the club. I saw you joined again. I think you were a member once already and you rejoined, and that's really, really cool. And I am going to send you a link so that we can have a 30 minutes chat on Zoom if you want. So I can show you around in the club a little bit if you want that. If you like, I can introduce you, show you around, show you all the resources. And tomorrow evening, 7 p.m., we have the live group coaching. So every Thursday, yeah, great, perfect. Then I'll send you a link inside the club in the chat, and then we'll do a 30-minute session, the 2 of us, and I'll introduce you to everything. And I think we should probably talk about this question that you have, because it's probably a little bit better to get into that in a one-on-one conversation between the 2 of us, because I think I would need a little bit more insights into that. So it's definitely not so common that I hear that 4 different types of tinnitus reset every night. But it is definitely not uncommon to hear that someone has 4 different types of tinnitus, so that people have different neighboring frequencies together, right? That is not something that's uncommon. But it would be interesting to hear what you say about, that they fluctuate and they combine or they reset. So I think if that's okay for you, we could leave that to our one-on-one session and discuss that in the one-on-one session, and find out what, not find out what's behind it, but like could be exploring that a little bit more in detail. I think that could be beneficial. Alrighty. Again, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. Then I would move on to the question from El Hueso. And then I will first answer that in Spanish a little bit. So it is, yeah, absolutely, Mark. Let's do that. I think that's the best option, because, it will be difficult for you to set the scene here, typing in the chat, letting me know what this background story is and everything. We'll probably better do that one-on-one. Will probably be easier question to answer, or probably easier to talk that in a Zoom session. So I want to answer that question from El Hueso, the bone, love it, in Spanish first, and then I'm going to translate for you guys, if that's okay. ¿Qué piensas de Lenire? De hecho, Lenire, ellos estuvieron un sponsor de mi podcast por un rato. Allá arriba también está el link para el podcast. Yo he estado trabajando con ellos un poco, y también he hecho 2 entrevistas con el Chief Science Officer, el man que es el líder de la división científica de Lenire. Yo creo que al final es un buen aparato, es un buen servicio que ofrecen, pero sí me parece que es bastante caro, y al final no es una cura final para la mayoría de la gente. Te ayuda a, ¿cómo se dice? Como a reducir el volumen que tú escuchas de tu tinnitus, también como lo hacemos con Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, y como lo mismo como que yo ofrezco con el coaching o con la comunidad. Realmente Lenire hace casi lo mismo, porque realmente es el acondicionamiento hacia el tinnitus que es tu problema, y ellos no eliminan tu tinnitus o algo así. Ellos hacen que tu cerebro no percibe tanto el tinnitus como enemigo. Y eso es lo que ellos hacen. Y a mí me parece que sí tienen estudios que dicen que no es tan malo y que sí puede servir para una gente, pero yo al final creo que sí es bastante caro por lo que es. pero pues hay que intentar y para alguna gente ha servido mucho y para otros no tanto. Eso es mi opinión. Avísame si está bien con esa respuesta. All right, then I'll translate quickly for you guys. So the question was, what do I think about Lenire? And my answer to that is, I don't think Lenire is a bad thing, not at all. I think Lenire can be valuable and valid for a few people. I do think it is quite expensive for what it offers. That's just my personal opinion. They have been sponsors of my podcast for a while. And I have 2 podcast episodes where I interviewed the founder of Lenire, or one of the, no, Chief Scientific Officer, Hubert Lim. You can find the link also here in the chat comments. I put the link in the chat comments. So I interviewed that founder as well 2 times, and so they have a relatively valid scientific basis, as much as I can assess, because I'm not a scientist and I can't go into studies and stuff like study design, etc., that deeply. But I do think they have a reason to be there. I just think the service is a little bit expensive, and in the end, what they offer is not a complete elimination of tinnitus either. What they show also through the studies is that they have a reduction of tinnitus burden or perceived tinnitus burden over the time period of the treatment. And in the end, and Hubert Lim also explains that in the interview, what they do is they do the same thing that, or similar thing of what we do in acceptance and commitment therapy and inside the club and with the coaching, namely to reconditions the brain response to tinnitus, not to eliminate tinnitus completely. So if you read that properly, it simply is, and he talks about this in the interview that I did with him as well, the reconditioning of how our brain responds to our tinnitus, and that the brain doesn't perceive tinnitus as so threatening anymore. And they assess that over the period of 6 months, the period of treatment. And then it shows that some people do actually benefit from it. I've had a lot of people who I've worked with who have benefited very much from it, but not finally got the ultimate what they wanted to get. And then I've also had people who had less benefit from it, which Lenire also openly say. Like they also openly say that, I mean, some people don't benefit as much from the treatment. So yeah, I mean, it is quite pricey, and I believe it's a little bit like taking the Xanax for anxiety, because even if it does reduce your tinnitus in volume, I've seen people with very low tinnitus reacting very severely to their tinnitus. So it doesn't really matter what your volume is as much, but it's a lot more about how you are designed to responding to your tinnitus. And in essence, I mean, I'm not scientific enough, but Lenire, in my opinion, is something that everyone can try if you have the money, and if you think you want to try it out and you have the money, then do it by all means, because everyone should do whatever they think they must do. But I also think there are other ways to go about this, and they are not mutually exclusive, right? We could try different things, also a combination of things. Yeah. All right. Let me just drink something quickly because my throat is getting quite dry. Right. So the next section that I wanted to get in with you guys is what causes tinnitus. Let me just share screen. Share tinnitus. No, that's not what I wanted to do right now. Yay. 1 second, guys. Okay, weird. I wanted to see whether I could change the camera quickly, but I wanted to do 3 more things, and we have about 10 more minutes. I will try to answer 3 questions that I have set myself to answer today in this live. First one is, what causes tinnitus? Second, does tinnitus always get worse? Some people always are afraid that their tinnitus might get worse, and I can fully understand that. I had that anxiety for a long time as well. And the final one, is there a cure? So these are the 3 things that I wanted to work to answer. But before you, H has another question. I have a thought about how to approach tinnitus. I'm actively working my tinnitus by practicing mindfulness, etc. It's easier to distract myself and not think about it. The problem is that my brain needs peace and quiet after a period of exhaustion. I've always had tinnitus, but it's become much more noticeable, and I've been focusing on it a lot lately. Yeah, and the exhaustion is because you have an emotional reaction and you're trying to avoid and fight that emotional reaction. And if you say you always need to distract yourself, then subconsciously you're still probably somehow upset or having some underlying feeling of nervousness or annoyance about your tinnitus and fighting that. And every time you become, you notice it again, you're getting pulled back into that vicious cycle. And acceptance and commitment therapy teaches us a very very, very different approach, because when we're habituated, we don't really do anything about our tinnitus and we just go about our lives. So then it doesn't bother us, right? But when we're not habituated and we're in this reactivity game where we constantly, respond to tinnitus over and over again like this, then, not thinking like it is nearly impossible. So, this is something like thought suppression is in acceptance and commitment, something that we say it can be done, but it's incredibly difficult, and there is a huge amount of energy that you're going to be spending. Like, think of it this way, right? When I tell you guys right now, don't think of a pink elephant. What are you thinking about? All of you, probably. Well, maybe like very few people actually get to not think of the pink elephant, but thought suppression is nearly impossible. Your brain can't help but think about the exact thing that you're trying to avoid. So, a much more interesting and good way to help your brain to understand that tinnitus is not dangerous is to accept the existence of tinnitus, to accept the existence of negative thoughts and feelings towards your tinnitus, because it's totally normal, because you've had a lot of bothersome tinnitus and it's been difficult on your life, right? So therefore you're focusing a lot on it and your brain wants to protect you, so you want to get rid of the pain that tinnitus causes, so therefore you try to avoid it. But a much better way in acceptance and commitment therapy is to, openly address the thoughts and feelings that you have about your tinnitus, not to distract or avoid it, not to fight it, and then work with us with many different techniques, the fusion techniques, the ACT key, as we call it in the community, these group coachings that we do, to develop individual strategies for you. So it is really, really important that you know that there's a different way to responding to tinnitus that will, change of how much your brain perceives it to be a problem. Think about someone who's an insomniac and someone who's sleeping normally. The insomniac will do everything to get themselves to sleep, yet they can't sleep. And the person who's not an insomniac, who sleeps normally, will do absolutely nothing for sleeping. What's the difference between the two of them? The one perceives it to be a problem, the other one perceives it to be a thing that they do not need to do anything, and that's why they're doing it, right? And tinnitus is the same thing. The more you try to engineer or avoid or do around your tinnitus, the worse it often gets. So there are a lot of things that we can do instead of like dealing with tinnitus in this particular way. And in acceptance and commitment therapy, we can set that way up, and that's what we did in the Small Wins Challenge, to allow your brain to understand it differently, to use its neuroplastic abilities, to then finally rewire itself and to habituate to your tinnitus. That's actually Glenn messaging me, Glenn Schweitzer from Rewiring Tinnitus, because we're going to record the 100th podcast episode. I can release this already, that Glenn and I are working on my 100th podcast episode, celebrating 5 years of my podcast. So Glenn is messaging me when it would be good for him to do it and when his daughter is not in daycare. Because that's coming out next week Friday. This week Friday, no podcast episode, because I'm working on the 105-year celebration of the Tinnitus podcast. And I'm going to do that with Glenn. Fantastic guy. Check his YouTube channel out as well. Alrighty. We want to get back into 3 final questions. And UH, I hope that answered your question a teeny tiny bit. Maybe try out www.mytinnitus.club. Whoop. There we are. Are these links not clickable? No, they're not. Not nice. Not great, YouTube, but all right. What causes tinnitus? So in 99% of all cases, or in most cases, tinnitus is often a form of different things, but in almost all cases, some degree of hearing loss plays a role. often people still tell me like, hey, but my doctor tells me I don't have any hearing loss. That's not entirely true. They measure up to 8 kilohertz because that's the amount of hearing that the human ear mostly is capable of hearing and needing to hear, right? So speech and everything. So it's really, really important that, speech understanding is good and so on and so forth. And that's why the doctor measures up to 8 kilohertz. But the human brain, when we're born, can hear up to almost 20 kilohertz. So like dog whistles and stuff, which I and many of you probably are not able to hear anymore, right? Like me with my one deaf ear and the hearing aid in here, and now clogged and a little bit of sinuses because of my cold. But so what we most need to hear, and you probably heard of the speech banana, most of us, we have to be able to hear to up and about 8 to 10 kilohertz. And often when the doctor says you have no hearing loss, what he means is you have no hearing loss in that area. Doesn't mean that you have no hearing loss in the higher frequencies. It's just not really tested, and it's not necessary to test it, because only when you have hearing loss that's relevant will you start doing something with hearing aids, for example. So that is the primary cause for tinnitus, because in the inner ear we have little hair cells. It's incredibly fun and cool to think about how the hearing actually works, because hearing is not in the ear, it's in the brain, right? So it's incredibly cool to think about that hearing actually works fantastically. Like you can't make this stuff up. And it's actually sound pressure arriving at the eardrum, right? This little drum, making it vibrate, and then there's a fluid behind it, and inside the fluid there are some little hair cells. I'll say the easy version now, okay? It's more scientific, and you can research and Google it, but there's some hair cells that are getting moved together with the fluid moves, yeah? And then the hair cells move in the fluid, and that gets translated into an electrical signal into the cochlea, and it sends up the auditory nerve into the brain and interpreted by the auditory cortex and decoded, so to say, as a signal. And that's what you perceive as sound. Pretty cool, right? It's the same thing with your eyes. You don't see directly with your eyes, you see with your brain, right? Because the eyes only take the light and everything that's here, colors and whatnot, and the eyes take it together. And then in the brain, in the vision place where the brain processes the vision, it's going to be put together as a picture, and I see my screen, I see what you guys have been writing there, and so on and so forth. And the same is true with sound. Very, very cool. And when we have tinnitus, when we have hearing loss, some of these little hair cells, they start to misfunction. So they're not upright anymore. They start to misfunction a little bit. They can't move that well anymore. Unfortunately, that not moving that's a hypothesis, right? Maybe rebutted in future, but that's one of the hypotheses right now, is that this non-moving hairs is creating a phantom sound, because there should be movement, right? So when they don't move at all, the signal that doesn't arrive in the brain is simply said like, oh, there is no signal, but there should be a signal, because it can't be that they're not moving at all. So they interpret that absence of movement as tinnitus. And that's why we believe, or that's at least the current scientific opinion on what causes tinnitus. And of course, there are many other factors like, TMJ, like when you have, or struggling with your neck and back. These are complementing factors, or stress, or any other things. Like they are complementary factors, but underlyingly, most reasons for people to have tinnitus is hearing loss. And that's really, really important that you guys know that, because in that way, we can normalize it and we can say hearing loss is normal for everyone on this planet. There's no one without, if you're not a baby or between 0 and 15 years and your hearing is spot on and perfect, then it's very likely that you have some degree of hearing loss. Now that outside it's very loud all the time, we have our AirPods in all the time, we go to noisy places, so it's very normal that we rack up hearing loss, and we always have, right? It's just normal. Our bodies just get worse as we age, so that's not an uncommon thing. And tinnitus is simply the response, unfortunately, of our brain to get hearing tinnitus. And there is research that suggests that some people don't have tinnitus so intensely, or they don't have tinnitus at all, because that's a genetic predisposition that the auditory cortex knows that this is not a signal that they need to present. So some people are lucky, and even with hearing loss, they don't get tinnitus, but about 25 to 30% of the population on average have tinnitus. That obviously fluctuates, age ranges, etc. We have another question here from Digital Forward. I like that, Digital Forward. I have had tinnitus since 2010, which became suddenly a lot louder last August. I already went through the fight or flight phase. Currently, I have some congestion, which makes the T louder. Yep, I hear you. I can handle the T, but my sleep has been terrible. I know I can fix this, but it takes time. I hope to habituate ASAP again. Yeah, I definitely think you will. For sleep, I have a really, really, really cool suggestion for you. Let me try this now, okay? Let me try this, and you guys need to tell me whether I can see my screen. Yeah, can you see my screen? Can you guys just quickly message me in the chat whether you can see my screen? It should be an infinity screen now. Very, very cool. Just quickly message me in the chat. Can you see my screen right now? Yeah, very good. Infinite screens. But that means you can see this screen as well now. Yeah, right. You should be able to see this screen now as well. So we have a designated space here inside the club for tinnitus and sleep, where I interviewed my all-time favorite sleep specialist, Dr. Guy Meadows from London. So he's really, really, really cool. He has a lot of insights and will tell you how to get better with your sleep. There's a lot of stuff also here in acceptance and commitment therapy, learning videos, week-long learning videos, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and all these topics with acceptance and commitment therapy. Then in monthly topic resources, we're doing the Small Wins Challenge right now, which you can see here. Foundations for Calm, January, next month, Finding Joy in February, and then Spring into Resilience is going to be really cool. Tomorrow we have accountability check-in. We have, from the last few events in the club, the last few months, patience and the habituation process. We have tinnitus and stoicism was a big thing last year. Self-compassion and tinnitus was really nice. I really enjoyed that. Neuroplasticity as well. We have a daily chit-chat where people talk about stuff all the time, and it can be quite useful. It's quite nice. Daily success stories, which is nice, where people share of what has been working really well for them and how they really enjoy their life and how they keep going despite their tinnitus, and how that enables them to habituate as well. Daily habit tracker is really cool. We have a new members area where new members get introduced and get kudos and cheered up and everything. So that's quite cool, really nice. Everyone gets a nice welcome. And then also here in the premium space, we have an 8 weeks course plus, so a very extensive course with like exercises and modules. And then we have the 2-day retreat also as part of the premium subscription, where you can watch the 2-day retreat that I did a few years ago. Like one video is 3 hours, the other one is also 3 hours, and that you can access as soon as you're in the club. For the basic subscriptions, we have some basic courses down here as well, an audio guide course, and then of course our weekly events, meetups and events. So you see it, tomorrow is accountability, and then you just simply click on the Zoom link and you get taken directly into the meeting. But that's it. I will, infinity screen. There we are. That's it. Yes, Digital Forward. I know sleep has been a big thing for many people. I think there is a short version of this interview also on my YouTube channel. If you just search on my YouTube channel for Dr. Guy Meadows, then you should be able to find it. Or send me a quick message later or something like that. Or post it under a comment to remind me in the community section of my YouTube channel, and then I will post okay. And did you like it? Was it useful for you? Hope it was. He has a book that's very cool as well, so I would check that out. Very, very useful. If you're struggling with sleep, then that's a fantastic book. Sleep book by Dr. Guy Meadows has helped me a lot with my sleep. Alrighty. 2 more things that I want to do. Does tinnitus always get worse? Yes, remember you saying that when you're awake at night, you think about laying on the beach. Did I? Maybe I did. Can't remember that. Already been a while. 3 years nearly, that interview, I think. Or 2? Yeah, I don't even remember anymore. So much stuff happened the last 2 years. Does tinnitus always get worse? Yes and no. Tinnitus doesn't necessarily get worse. For many people, it never gets worse. And for some people, it does get worse. That is very, very individual. And it's the same thing in life. Do we always get a terrible disease? No, sometimes. And there's not really much we can do about it. We're humans. And tinnitus, even if tinnitus does get worse, I'm trying to get people to not be so anxious about that, because if you are constantly anxious about your tinnitus potentially getting worse at some distant time in the future, you're going to have a shitty time in the here and the now, right? Always worrying about that. And if your tinnitus never does actually get any worse, then you've had all that anxiety, and all that anxiety has only served one purpose. It's made you much, much more reactive to the tinnitus. And your brain's constantly focusing on it, and then the whole loop starts and continues, and you know where I'm going with this, right? So it is very, very important that we know that, yes, tinnitus can get worse, and yes, you can control it a little bit in, taking care of your hearing, making sure to protect your hearing where adequate, not overprotecting, because then you lead into hyperacusis. But adequately protecting your hearing is always a good idea if you don't, want to risk it. And yeah, then that's a good chance. But of course, there are so many things in life, and tinnitus can get worse. Yes, absolutely. It has gotten worse a couple of times for me. But I've always been able to habituate to it. And my idea is, no matter how bad tinnitus gets, everyone can habituate to it. Because I've seen so many people with tinnitus. I've seen people with very low tinnitus having very high, huge reactions to it. And I've seen people with very, very high tinnitus having almost no reaction to it. So I can very confidently say that I don't think it really matters how intense or loud your tinnitus is, or even if it does get worse. I believe you can habituate, and we have the tools, and I have created tools inside the club or in my coaching program for everyone to learn exactly what they need to be doing in order to be able to habituate to the tinnitus. And I can confidently say that I believe everyone can habituate, and you don't necessarily need to be so afraid of the tinnitus getting worse. Because if you're always afraid about your tinnitus getting worse in the here and the now, then the only thing that's going to do is that's going to ramp up your anxiety, even increase the amount that you think about your T, and feed on that fight or flight instinct, constantly thinking about the tinnitus. Then you feel bad in your body, and then your brain says, oh, I'm feeling bad in my body, that's because of my tinnitus. Oh, then it must be really dangerous, I should be doing something about this, right? And that's the way you will have a hard time to habituate, and that's going to be very, very difficult. Yeah, I can make a video about my sleep hygiene. I found that sleep hygiene is not the most useful thing for myself always. It can and it cannot be. It's just generally how many things I have on my plate and everything, and sometimes I have a bad night as well. I just, yeah, same thing with the tinnitus. I don't tend to overreact to that, right? But I mean, there's bad nights and bad nights. There's 2 hours of sleep, and there's 6 to 7 hours of sleep. And what a bad night is going to be individually classified by each of you guys. Final question for tonight. Is there a cure for tinnitus? Is there a cure for tinnitus? This is the money gold question that Hugh, yeah, I hear the tinnitus when I go to the loo in the middle of the night. Everyone hears that tinnitus. I mean, I do hear my tinnitus all the time, yeah. Not when I'm sleeping. I think that's the only place where I don't hear my tinnitus. But I hear it, yes, I do, as soon as I wake up, but I don't perceive it because it's not important to me. When I get up, I get up and I make myself a cup of tea. I love myself a good cup of Earl Grey in the morning with just a hint of milk. And then I sit down and I read some news or write in my diary. I have a nice 6-minute diary that my wife gave me for Christmas. There's a really cool thing where you spend 6 minutes in the morning, 6 minutes in the evening to write down a little bit about your values, about the things that are important to you. It's quite cool. I like it. So that's what I do. I drink my cup of tea and I write down in my diary, and the tinnitus is there, but I'm not paying attention to it. So it's almost like it's not there for me, technically. But is there a cure for tinnitus? Currently, there is no cure for tinnitus in the sense that we can administer medical treatment, or you'd be able to take a pill or something like that and just get rid of your tinnitus. There is currently nothing like that. But I do believe, and this is my 100% belief, if you look at the prevalence of tinnitus, 20 to 30%, most people are habituated and they experience tinnitus, but they're not bothered by it. So it is incredibly important to remember that, the cure to tinnitus is maybe not the cure to the sound that you're looking for, but you're looking to no longer be distracted and annoyed and upset about your tinnitus, right? Think about it for yourself. Like, I mean, yes, of course, tinnitus is, different from just having nothing and silence, which is what we're used to when we are children and we grow up. But when you think about it, it's not that different, right? It's just a little bit of an addition of a soundscape for you. So my opinion is, if you were to no longer have any emotional reaction to your tinnitus, would that be close to a cure? Or would it not? I know that many of you guys are saying, "Oh no, but it's not a cure." And I'm like, yeah, yes, it's not a cure in the sense that tinnitus is gone, but in the absence of any real valid cures that come without any real dangerous side effects, I think habituation and not having any kind of reaction to your tinnitus and living your life as if you didn't have tinnitus is equally as valid, right? And who are we to say that if 20 million people in the US alone live fully habituated with tinnitus, then and they on a usual daily basis, they are not bothered at all by their tinnitus. Who are we to say that who are we to say that that's the only way? I mean, all of these people are not running around trying to look for a complete cure every day. Imagine what that would be on the. Oops, I dropped something in my bin, I think. Imagine what that would mean for the economy or the country if 20 million people were running around hectically searching for something they could do about the tinnitus every day. Yes, it affects a lot of people, absolutely. Ridiculous amounts of people over the whole world have tinnitus. But most of these people, like, think about it. We are 10 people in the stream. Yeah, it's probably also because I'm not that popular yet. Can't understand that. We're getting there slowly. But I think the point is not getting a complete cure right now. And if you are looking for a complete cure, then you're constantly running against the wall of not finding one, getting very upset that your tinnitus is still there and bothersome and triggers you. And then you're going to be continuously very reactive to your tinnitus. So I think of, all right, take care of yourselves. All right, yeah, thanks. We'll see you soon. Greetings to the kids. Yeah. And Hugh says, true, yes, he's met veterans who have it for years and never knew. Yeah, I mean, you look, tinnitus is like, for some people, it's just normal. When I talk about, like, for example, construction workers, the young guy goes to the old guy and says, hey, I've got this thing in my ear. And then the old guy says, oh, yeah, we all have it. And then the young guy never bats an eye, right? I've had stories like that, right? Where they, like, it's absolutely normal in their work environment to develop tinnitus. And since they have heard from one of their colleagues that they all have it and it's completely normal, it's sort of been put into perspective. And yeah, some soldiers, of course, get PTSD and tinnitus, and then tinnitus can get very bad. Imagine if you have, like, one of your comrade exploding next to you in 1,000 pieces and that sets your tinnitus off. Think of what you're thinking of every time your tinnitus is bothering you, right? So that's the connection between tinnitus, the amygdala, the fear and panic-based center, how we get depressed and all of that just because of tinnitus. Not because of the sound, but because of our brain's reaction and what drives the anxiety and what makes bothersome tinnitus bothersome. That's the big problem. Yeah, yeah, sure, yeah, because that's obviously something very stressful, right? To have that treatment. Yeah, that's very stressful. Yeah. I think self-compassion is a really good resource. I think I also have a couple of videos on this channel about self-compassion. Oh, no, I dropped the whole bin. To give yourself a lot of self-compassion towards the fact that it is quite difficult to deal with tinnitus and to be dealing with additional stuff such as PTSD or depression or burnout. There's also studies that show how many people actually have depression in Germany. It's insane. It's so many people, but it's also good that people talk about it, right? I've been going through that last year as well, and I'm still not finished with going through it. I've been getting better, but I'm definitely not done yet, so to say. It's a long road. That's difficult. We got to take care of each other, right? We got to take care of ourselves as well. So no, there is no ultimate cure that you can pop a pill and directly get rid of your tinnitus. But I do think that everyone can go from bothersome to non-bothersome tinnitus so that they don't have to, wish that their tinnitus wasn't there anymore, so they could go about their normal life. But I believe everyone can go about their normal life, and you will be able to, despite the presence of your tinnitus. And I mean, if I'm not an example for that with this one deaf ear and the hearing aid and severe loud tinnitus, then I don't know what is an example for it, right? So if I can't motivate you guys to do this journey, to check our resources out as well, I posted them all the way up there. No, actually, I didn't. Damn, son, I didn't. Did I post them? No, I think I didn't. But let me post them again. So there is the resources. And Ashish, you also had a question. Do you have any tips for concentrating while having tinnitus? I can shift my focus away from tinnitus while doing almost all activities except when it comes to reading. Oh, yeah, I've had that a lot. It's also the thought like, I can't read anymore. And I used to enjoy reading so much, so annoying that I can't read anymore, right? Yeah, and then every time you open a book, you start focusing on the book and also on your tinnitus. I would say go slow. Start with reading 1 minute and maybe put a sound in the background. And then the next time do 2 minutes. And then the next time do another minute. And slowly but steadily, what you want to give is you want to give your brain a cue that reading, even with your tinnitus, is still possible. I read with tinnitus all the time. I love reading. I have a lot of, like, not only these, but these are only a few books that I have and that I read. I read every day. And my tinnitus doesn't bug me at all when reading. So it is something that the conditioned experience of whether it's possible or not is something. But when you have the thought, I can't read anymore, and then you sit down to read, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You sit down to read, open the book, and you're like, oh yeah, I already know that I won't be able to do it. Well, how do you go about when you want to learn riding the bicycle or skiing or something? I already know I can't do it. How is it gonna work? It's not, right? Self-fulfilling prophecies. So I would go very slow. I would question the thought that you say, I think I can't read because of my tinnitus. I would say like, maybe I can, maybe I can't. Let me try it out just for very short periods of time, and let me create little points of evidence that it is possible. And then slowly but steadily, I can convince my brain that it is still absolutely possible and I can enjoy reading despite the presence of my tinnitus. But I wanted to do half an hour, and we've done 47 minutes of live stream. You'll be able to watch it all later on the channel, the recording, if you have missed certain parts of it. Thank you all very much for showing up. I think I've answered a few questions. What causes tinnitus? Does tinnitus always get worse? Is there a cure? We've talked about a lot of different questions in this live stream. I think it's been a successful live stream once again. Click the link that I just posted if you want. That link is also under most of my videos. And actually, I can just share my screen again for another second, because when you click on this link, you'll be able to do a few things. And I want to take you through them quickly. So the first one is you can sign up for my free 4-day email course. You just type in your information here, you hit submit, and then over the course of 4 days, you get 4 valuable emails with insights on what you can do in order to, get quicker relief from tinnitus and start your habituation journey. This is the first resource I want to share with you. The second one that I created mostly just for your YouTube or for my YouTube audience, sorry for that, is a digital relief starter kit. Digital relief starter kit, $10, and I can show you on Drive. Digital tinnitus relief starter package. You can see I have everything from success stories to learning videos, introduction to tinnitus habituation. Sorry for that, 10-minute video. Accepting commitment is a 20-minute video, so 2 videos for you. And then there are sound therapy files, 10 hours of sound therapy files that you can download from here and then play. So you have them offline, so you don't have to listen to ads or stuff on YouTube. And then I have some worksheets, roadmap to habituation, tinnitus roadmap for relief, right? There you go. All of this stuff. Then a worksheet with daily practices that you can do, daily practices for tinnitus relief, and then some next steps that you can do in order to, implement that tinnitus roadmap. And a first welcome with an overview of everything that's included in your relief package. That's the second thing that's in there. Then the third thing is a link where you can find out a lot more about our program, a little bit more about myself, my personal journey with tinnitus, the different ways of what we do in the community, some stories of why people loved it again, some of the success stories, a link to the app directly, what you need to know about the different packages, what is included in the packages, and then some questions. If you have any questions, they're addressed here. And then you can simply click on these links, and then you'll be taken into mytinnitus.club. I can't do this plan because I'm already a member of mytinnitus.club. And as soon as you're in here, you have access to all these resources, spaces, chatting, and being with all these other amazing members inside our club, joining our weekly group coaching meetings. Tomorrow's the next one. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, it's nearly 5 p.m. I have a few things to organize before I finish my day. So yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you all so much for watching, for showing up. I appreciate it a lot. I know that the channel is growing slow, but with my story of burnout and depression last year, I swore myself that slow is steady and steady is, progress. And I won't do too much. And I want to focus on what matters most, helping each and every single one to get a little better with tinnitus. And if this live is something that I spend an entire hour without getting much, I mean, I get something back because um, yeah, you're right, Rob. But you see channels like Ben Thompson or something like that, and they have a very, very big reach, and it doesn't matter. I'm happy with it, and I want to thank you for your support, that you join these lives, and it gives me a sense of purpose, which is also more important than subscriber numbers and revenue on a monthly basis, I think, to be able to know that I can make a difference out there, and that I can support each and every single one of you at least a little bit, or can be part of your journey. And I think that's going to be something that in the future I'll be very happy about, even when things are, going crazy fast with a lot of members, etc. But yeah, I'm very grateful for that. So thank you all for being here today again. Friday, we have a new video as well. Again, as I mentioned, no podcast episode this week. Next week is a celebration of 100 episodes on the Tinnitus, Habituation, and Relief podcast with Frida. And yeah, that's going to be awesome. Thank you, Karen. Looking forward to seeing you soon as well. I know that we have a one-on-one that's coming up as well, I think. Thank you. Yes, I will rest a little bit and get better with my cold as well. So thank you. And for those who are in the club, I'll see you guys tomorrow for the coaching session, for the group coaching. And for the rest of you, I'll see you in the next live next Wednesday. All right. Thank you, everyone. See you all soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.